Hello, I'm Dave Rowland, Communications Director for the San Diego City Council. I would like to welcome you back to what I'm calling Council Conversations, our rather creative name for this series of, well, conversations with members of your City Council. Just as a refresher, the Council is the legislative body of the City of San Diego. It's made up of 9 members from geographic districts with equal numbers of residents. They make the laws, and the mayor, as the city's chief executive, who oversees city departments such as parks and recreation, finance, planning, libraries, et cetera, well, he implements them. As I've mentioned in previous installments of this series, a rare thing is happening at the end of this year. 5 members of the City Council will be leaving office, either because they have served the maximum allowable number of terms, which is 2, or they're running for a different office. So this December, 5 new members will be sworn in, and the council will look very, very different. I'm talking with departing members and those who will return, and I hope to talk to new members once they're sworn in. Today, I am joined by Councilmember Montgomery Steppe. She represents District 4, which includes the communities of Encanto, Valencia Park, Lincoln Park, Paradise Hills, Emerald Hills, Skyline Hills, Broadway Heights, Choya's View, Oak Park, Redwood Village, Rolando Park, North Bay Terrace, South Bay Terrace, Lomita Village, Webster, O'Farrell, and Alta Vista. Wow, that's a lot of neighborhoods. She serves as chair of the council's Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee. Elected to the council in 2018, she is one of 4 members who will be returning in 2021. So council member, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you so much, Dave, for doing this.
Sure. So let's start out personally speaking. How are you getting through this pandemic? How's it been for you and those close to you?
Well, probably like it's been for a lot of other people, it's been very tough. There have been a lot of adjustments, and you know, it has been a time of a lot of reflection too about the way that we should live life. So, you know, my faith has really gotten me through. My family bonds are strong. I've been recently married, so, you know, all things are not bad in 2020.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. So it has been tough, but I think the number one issue for me, and the thing that I, you know, go to bed with at night and wake up in the morning with, is, you know, the issues that the pandemic have caused in public health, in job loss, in food insecurity. We're experiencing so much of that in the district. So that has been the toughest part.
Yeah. For me, it took me some time, but I'm really starting to miss the things that I used to be able to do. It took me time because I tend to be okay sort of being, you know, alone and not doing a lot of stuff, but I'm really starting to miss it. Are there things that you in particular that you love to do that you haven't been able to do just personally?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm a workaholic. So, you know, I will always work, and thankfully I can still work and have the opportunity to do that. But I love to travel. You know, I love to hop on a plane and get out of here for a few days. And that just has not been a reality. And you know, folks are traveling, and it is safe for some folks, but it's still not the same. There's not that freeness to it. So that has been very, very tough for me. I love going, you know, I have a group of cousins that we go out. We try to go out at least quarterly and, you know, just be together. And we're just not able to do that right now. So there are a lot of things that I miss, and a lot of connections, you know, that I'm looking forward to making again someday.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's zoom out a little bit and back up. I'd love to hear you talk about what shaped you kind of as a person and where your core values come from. Are there people or times in your life that that you can point to as sort of responsible for how you view the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my parents were so involved in our lives and had such a desire for us to have the opportunities that they did not have. And so I have two younger brothers, and we grew up with a lot of support in that area. So that really helped to shape me to sort of have confidence to do some of the things that I've been able to do in life. But at the same token, I have, my grandmother, she's no longer with us, but she raised 4 kids on her own in what is now Seabreeze Apartments. It was Bay Vista Apartments. And she was very, very, very strong. And also she taught us about humility. She taught us about connection with people. She taught us how important family was, and how important it is to care for our brother and our sister who are not family. And so, she was so instrumental in, I believe, who I am today. Also going away to Spelman College at the age of 18, going across the country, really, really did shape me a lot. And I think the last major thing was, suffering from an autoimmune illness while in college, and just really having to pull everything back at such a young age, and having to look at life differently at such a young age helped me to really empathize and I think be able to do this job and with the motivation that I do it.
Yeah, it gives you that kind of thing gives you perspective, certainly.
Sure.
For folks who followed your run for office, they got to know your background a little bit. But for those who might not know you too well, just give us the basics on your history.
Sure. So born and raised in District 4. Spent about 32 of my 42 years of living in District 4. It's, what prompted the run and what motivated me to run. But I went to Spelman College, as I said, came back home and went to California Western School of Law, and have just had a wonderful time being able to represent the community that I grew up in. I worked at City Hall for 3 elected officials, and I actually ran against an elected official that I worked for. She had said some comments about Black people and police interactions that were not taken kindly by myself or a lot of members in the community. So I did decide to leave her office. From there, I went to the ACLU and led the local campaign on bail reform. At that time, I was pretty well versed in politics, so I did not want to run for office because of that. I knew that I would be up against an entire power structure, and that was a very, very hard decision for me to make. But I did make the decision, and the community showed up, and that's why we're here.
Once you were elected, tell me about your priorities that you had when you first started.
Yep, priorities have stayed consistent from the campaign through to now. And so the first priority was really reimagining policing and public safety. The second priority is economic opportunity for all. And then the third priority was safe and healthy communities. So we really took that from the campaign, integrated into city government, and pretty much everything that we're working on falls under one of those 3 pillars of governance, because we heard loud and clear from the community the things that were needed, and we try our best every day to ensure that the folks are getting what they need. And in government, it is, as you know, it is very hard, and it's slower than what a lot of folks like, especially when you're in immediate need. It is hard to provide the needs of people who have just been disproportionately impacted for so long. And we have to work through this system to get the things that they have been needing for decades. but we're doing our best. We're putting our best foot forward every day to stick to those pillars of governance so that we can be consistent and we can be focused.
Now let's talk about this year. It's been obviously a year that nobody expected. In addition to COVID-19, we saw the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others, and that led to one of the most significant movements for justice in our lifetimes. And this affected your work this year in a major way. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it absolutely did. So as we were going through our budget hearings and dealing with the effects of the pandemic, we had the George Floyd situation occur. And so, we were already facing significant loss in our budget, how much the city would be bringing in based on a complete stop to tourism, and a lot of the industries that this region and the city depend on were at a halt. So we were dealing with that, trying to keep our libraries or keep, our recreation centers funded, and, all of those neighborhood services that can change lives. We were trying to ensure that those would be in place for San Diegans and for our residents here. And then we have this national occurrence of George Floyd, and we were all in a position where we couldn't turn away from it. We were in the middle of a pandemic. Many people were at home and had to view this horrific murder. And what that did was, because we've experienced the murders of unarmed Black men across this nation since the inception of this nation. It has become more prevalent now with social media, but we have experienced that. This, though, was a culmination of all of the activism around equity in policing and reimagining public safety. All of that energy really came into the movement that occurred at the time of George Floyd's murder. And so us from a city perspective, and not being able to be out with the community as much. I think the council president and I did, attend a protest together. But it's not the same as being able to be with our community, and and so we were dealing with communication issues. We were dealing with all of that, and had to go in and make budget decisions, and based on a call that to defund the police. So that was a very tough. It was very tough to go through that. Even tougher for people who are calling out for justice to experience that without the communication that I usually try to communicate with my community as much as possible. And so that really was a tough time, and it continues to be tough. Here's my issue right now, is that as the feelings that we first felt when we saw the knee on the neck of George Floyd, as they start to dissipate, then so does that energy. It starts to dissipate. And so what happens in government is, we have a tendency to go back to normal, or whatever it was before, which it has inherently been inequitable for people of color. So the challenge now is to not be comfortable, to continue to push, to continue to be driven by the community's voice, and to amplify that voice at City Hall. That is the challenge right now. We have to stay uncomfortable. We can't sit in our comfort, especially where we have many ways out. Like you said, we can be at home, you know, we can be removed. And right now we have to push ourselves to stay in the mix and continue to hear the voice of the people.
You talk about it being uncomfortable, and just briefly, I remember that budget hearing. Actually, there were a couple of them where it was just hours upon hours upon hours of people calling in and very angry. And personally, I could just tell you, knowing you and the council president and what your priorities and your values are, it was difficult for me to watch and listen to the anger pointed in your direction, but I had to keep reminding myself, where this is coming from. So I imagine it was difficult for you, but I imagine you put it in perspective.
Absolutely, very difficult. Difficult for myself, difficult for my staff members who also, have to take some of that as well. As staffers, staff members give up a lot to be a part of a political office, and so all of the vitriol, all of the social media posts and everything, at least for that week, it was very, very strong. It was hard. It was hard to go through that. But again, as you say, it is about perspective. And number one, at some point, as elected officials and us saying that we are going to make our lives and our decisions public and that we're going to represent people, we have to expect that we are going to go through some ups and downs. Right. That is, one thing. But another thing is that there is a lot of hurt and pain that has never had a platform to express that in a way where it could turn into productivity and a change and a shift. And so these are part of the growing pains of a changing city. I try not to be disrespectful to anyone at all. I don't think that is productive, but I also understand that if you have been let down in so many other ways, that that is a last ditch effort to get your voice heard. So we just had to get through it. We had to deal with it. We called a community meeting. It was via Zoom, but we had a lot of folks view that, where I was able to express the reasoning behind what was done on my end, take ownership over the things that I should have done that I did not, but put it in the perspective of a reality. We are in a position to get the absolute most for our community as we possibly can, and that's what we try to do.
And out of that came the creation of a new office, the Office of Race and Equity. I hope I've said that right.
Yes.
And so that is a tremendous accomplishment that you led, as well as I think $3 million for a racial equity fund. Mm-hmm. So I imagine if we back up and talk about your accomplishments, that ranks probably pretty high, I would imagine. Are there other accomplishments in your first couple of years that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, that is a big one in the Office of Race and Equity and the fund that's attached to it, because it speaks to the amount of work that we have to do in our city around making it an equitable city for people of color. But also, finally getting the Independent Commission on Police Practices across the board and on the ballot. It is, now Measure B. That was really a heavy lift, and it had been brought before, and because of procedure or not having enough votes, or, it went through a lot before it got to the point where it could be on the ballot. So that was a really, really, really big accomplishment. And on day one, we said we were dedicated to that and followed it through to the end. So that is something that we're really proud of. We also helped to form the Strategic Alliance of Ethnic Chambers, and we're able to give that group between the Asian Business Association, the Black Chamber of Commerce, and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce over $700,000 during this time to help small businesses that were not allowed to get money from the city small business fund. And we particularly allocated that money to businesses that were in low to moderate income areas. So that was a big thing. We've also done quite a bit around cleaning up our community, getting more sidewalks laid out, and I think we picked up about 500 tons of trash. We've done dumpster days, or we have a dumpster come out in each and every one of those neighborhoods that you named, and allow people to dump some of their belongings that they no longer want, instead of putting them out on the street. So we've just been able to really do quite a bit for our community with the support of my colleagues, and I've just been very grateful to be able to do this work.
Now let's pivot to the near future. As one of only 4 returning council members, some level of leadership, that remains to be seen. How much will be thrust upon you as just one of 4 returning members? What are your plans?
Here's the thing, Dave, that I've always wanted, and all of my plans will stem from this. I really want to create the strong council. We have a strong mayor system, and I believe that we need a strong council in order to provide the appropriate checks and balances, no matter who's the mayor, no matter who sits in those seats on the council dais. That we have to create a power structure that has that tug and pull, so that we can ensure that we're doing the best thing for our entire city. And we have seen many times the council be treated as figureheads, or we are supposed to go in line with whatever report is in front of us, whether it be a report from the mayor's staff, or it be a legal analysis from the city attorney. We really need to establish our power that I believe is already vested to us through the charter and the way that it is written. We have to work to continue that. And that is not to say that we have, or I have, any issues with any position at the city with regard to the mayor, the city attorney, or anyone else. What it is saying, though, is that we already know, and we know from the federal government on down, that if you give any one part of the government too much power, then that power tends to corrupt. And so we are there to check each other and to ensure, and that's how we ensure we get the best things for our city.
You've talked about the priorities that you came with when you started on the council. As you look ahead, are there other issues that you're going to add to any of those buckets, or are you just going to kind of stay focused on the core priorities that you've already mentioned?
Well, there's so much, right? For me, climate justice is an issue. Environmental justice is an issue. That is going to be, especially coming into the decisions that we'll have to make with regard to the franchise agreement and the climate action plan at its 5-year anniversary. We have a lot of work to do in that area. As I mentioned, another priority is, ensuring that the council is driving these conversations and being a strong legislative body. That is extremely important to me. But, a lot of these things run together. Just like when I talk about economic opportunity for all, I'm also talking safe and healthy communities, because we can look at the development of the Valencia Business Park. That is an area that has been neglected with regard to development for the last 2 decades. we are looking to create a San Diego energy equity complex. So this will help us in the areas of environmental justice, but it will also help us in economic justice, and it will create a safer and healthy community because we're providing those things for the residents that live there. So I think that, you know, these are broad enough to really cover so many of the issues that we are dealing with. I think when we're talking about the city also, and this is definitely more of a mayoral function, but I hope to assist in these areas of just being more operationally sound and being more efficient. That is not our job, but we do, from a constituent side, we deal with a lot of constituents and their issues. And that, you know, the way that operations is running, it really affects our relationships with our constituents. And so, you know, we have some ownership over that. And I really look forward to having a more efficiently run city. So as an aside, I definitely would love to be in those conversations. I think the last one that I'll say is transit. You know, we have the Orange Line that runs right through District 4. We have the Mid-Coast Trolley that's, you know, going to be opening pretty soon, that will, you know, take a lot of our folks all the way up and through La Jolla on a public transit line, which is awesome. But we also have the 5 big moves that are being introduced by the Sandag executive director and Hassan Akrada, which is a very bold plan that will take us into a whole nother realm with regard to transit. And, you know, I want to support that. I want to be there for that. I want to see that through. It probably won't be in action for years and years to come, but I would love to be a part of setting a foundation for something like that. It'll totally change the trajectory of our city. So,
yeah, folks can go to, I think it's sandag.org is my guess. If you Google Sandag and you can find the 5 big moves there and find out what that's all about. It's pretty exciting. So when I asked Council President Gomez to tell me something about City Hall that only a council member would know, she answered it in a way that made me want to reframe the question a little bit. You know, to what you would change overnight if you could do it. So you could answer it either way. Is there something that surprised you to learn, or something that you could wave a wand and change immediately?
Gosh, that is a good question. Not too much surprised me, actually. Just from, you know, working for 3 different elected officials, I do see a change. You know, I do see a shift. But nothing surprised me too much. I think the one thing that I would change is that I don't believe that we need to the reports and the things, the updates that council receives. I think they need to be more holistic, have all of it, the good, bad, the ugly in it. We need to be truthful. We need to be honest, you know, and if what we are driving is a good thing, then it will pass and it'll be successful. But we don't have to be manipulative with that. And I know in politics, that's supposed to be what it's all about, but in good government, it shouldn't be. You know, we should be able to have a clear data set and a whole package in order to make decisions from. And sometimes I think that is lacking. I just wish there was a little bit more trust amongst us to just be forthright with what is ahead of us so that we can make the best decisions.
Yeah, the tendency I think is to accentuate the positive in every instance. But what you're saying is that if it's, you know, if you're doing things right, you know, you don't need to sweep anything under the rug.
You really don't need to. And if there are issues, then let's work together to work them out. but to not be upfront and later on down the line, something happens, that's a problem. And we need to get away from that. This city deserves more than that. And so that's one thing I would change. The other thing I would change is I would have a legislative attorney on our floor just for us.
Is there an unsung hero at City Hall, or maybe even out in your communities somewhere that that just doesn't get enough attention for the work they do?
Oh gosh, there are so many. There are, the people that really work closely with my office that never are on the dais or, really don't get their names mentioned, that are helping our constituents along, that are, cutting down the weeds, in alleys and helping our seniors with all of their issues. That, those are the people. The people are employees that really put their hearts into what they do in an atmosphere that may not always reward or encourage that. I think that they deserve the Unsung Hero Awards.
We need to create that if there isn't one already. All right, final question. Let's talk about the new members coming in, the new council members. What's your best advice for them, having been in your seat for a couple of years now?
Stay true to yourself. There are a lot of political decisions that have to be made, and none of us can run away from that. But there are also core values that I think if you stick to, then you will be okay with the decisions that you have to make. So stick to your core values. Don't lose yourself in this rat race. Don't stay inside of this bubble. Continue to be uncomfortable. Have those uncomfortable conversations with your constituents. Work through them, whether there's agreement at the end or disagreement. That is so, so, so important. And put your constituents first. Don't get caught up in the City Hall stuff so much so that you forget who got you there.
Thank you so much, Council Member, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with me.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a great series that you're doing.
Great. So I've been speaking with City Council Member Monica Montgomery Steppe. I will be back soon with the next segment in this conversation series. Until then, please stay safe, stay sane, and goodbye for now.